Hello, Team OLA. This is Conrad Espino, one of the hosts of the Run to Win podcast, and I'm here today to give you another episode. Now we're going to be doing something a little different. Deacon Bailey is not on this episode. I've taken the liberty to try something a little new. There's a lot of content, media, by way of books, reading, good videos, motivational content that would apply to the life of running, life of sports. I also found a lot of good content that relates our faith. I'm a Catholic seminarian, so my faith into the realm of athleticism and sports. And so what I want to do in this episode is just read one of these pieces of media. I'll be reading a homily. I'll be reading a homily by Pope Leo XIV, our new pope, who's from Chicago. And I'll be reading one of his homilies given in Rome. And yeah, I'm just going to read it as a spiritual read. If you want to, the whole point of this is so that you can follow along and you can listen along as I read it. And afterwards, I'll give a little short reflection on it to try and explain it. The whole idea of this is in the monasteries, they do this thing where during meals, they'll have one person who sits in some corner of the room, and as the monks are eating their meal, instead of talking to each other, they won't talk to each other. They'll be in silence, and they'll simply listen along to this reading. It's usually some spiritual read. We call spiritual reading in the Catholic Church, things that would pertain to the spiritual life. So they'd hear a story of a saint, maybe, or some writer, some mystic, some spiritual author who expounds on some aspect of the Christian spiritual life, whether it be in prayer or growing in virtue or combating temptation, etc., etc. They'll read about that for the entire community to hear, so that as you're eating, you're not just thinking about random things or making random conversation with your neighbor. You're actually being fed, not just bodily, but spiritually. So that's the whole point of this episode, is I hope as you're training for the marathon, as you're recovering, as you're living your life, you're not just training your body up and then fueling your body in a physical way, but also in a spiritual way. Because part of running is also the strength of the soul. So without further ado, here is a homily of the Holy Father, Leo XIV, given on the solemnity of the Holy Trinity for the occasion of the Jubilee of Sport. Dear brothers and sisters, in the first reading we heard these words, "Thus says the wisdom of God. The Lord possessed me, the beginning of his ways, the forerunner of his prodigies of long ago. When the Lord established the heavens, I was there. Then was I beside him as his craftsman, and I was his delight day by day, playing before him all the while, playing on the surface of his earth. And I found delight in the human race." Proverbs chapter 8, verses 22, 27, 30, and 31. For St. Augustine, the Trinity and wisdom are intimately connected. Divine wisdom is revealed in the most holy Trinity, and wisdom always leads us to truth. While we are celebrating today the solemnity of the most holy Trinity, we are also marking the Jubilee of Sport. This combination of Trinity and sport is somewhat unusual, yet the juxtaposition is not inappropriate. Every good and worthwhile human activity is in some way a reflection of God's infinite beauty, and sport is certainly one of these. For God is not immobile and closed in on himself, but activity, communion, a dynamic relationship between the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which opens up to humanity and to the world. Theologians speak of perichoresis. The life of God is a kind of dance, a dance of mutual love. This dynamism of God's inner life gives birth to life. We were created by a God who finds joy in giving existence to his creatures, who delights in our world. As we heard in the first reading from Proverbs 8, chapter 8, verses 30 to 31. Some fathers of the church go so far as to speak of a Deus Udens, a God who plays. Sport can thus help us to encounter the triune God, because it challenges us to relate to others and with others, not only outwardly, but also and above all, interiorly. Otherwise, sport becomes nothing more than an empty competition of inflated egos. Here in Italy, spectators at sporting events often cheer athletes on by shouting out, "Dai, come one." The Italian word, however, means literally, give. This can give us cause to reflect. Sports are not only about physical achievements, however extraordinary, but also about giving of ourselves, putting ourselves, quote unquote, in play. It is about giving of ourselves for others, for our personal improvement, for our athletic supporters, for our loved ones, our coaches and colleagues, for the greater public, and even for our opponents. Being a quote-unquote good sport is more important than winning or not. St. John Paul II, himself, as we know, a sportsman, put it this way, quote, "Sport is a joy of life, a game, a celebration. As such, it must be fostered by recovering its sheer gratuity, its ability to forge bonds of friendship, to encourage dialogue and openness towards others, quite apart from the harsh laws of production and consumption and all other purely utilitarian and hedonistic approaches to life." From the homily for the Jubilee of Sports, given on the 12th of April, 1984, by Pope St. John Paul II. From this standpoint, let us reflect on three particular things that make sport, nowadays, a precious means for training in human and Christian virtues. First, in a society marked by solitude, where radical individualism has shifted the emphasis from us to me, resulting in a deficit of real concern for others, sport, especially team sports, teaches the value of cooperating, working together, and sharing. These, as we said, are at the very heart of God's own life. Sport can thus become an important means of reconciliation and encounter between peoples and within communities, schools, workplaces, and families. Second, in an increasingly digital society, where technology brings distant people closer together, yet often creates distances between those who are physically close, sport provides a valuable and concrete means of bringing individuals together, providing a healthier sense of the body, of space, effort, and real time. It counters the temptation to escape into virtual worlds, and it helps to preserve a healthy contact with nature and with real life, where genuine love is experienced. Third, in our competitive society, where it seems that only the strong and winners deserve to live, sport also teaches us how to lose. It forces us, in learning the art of losing, to confront one of the deepest truths of our human condition, our fragility, our limitations, and our imperfections. This is important because it is through the experience of these limits that we open our hearts to hope. Athletes who never make mistakes, who never lose, do not exist. Champions are not perfectly functioning machines, but real men and women who, when they fall, find the courage to get back on their feet. St. John Paul II hit the mark when he said that Jesus is the true athlete of God, because he defeated the world, not by strength, but by the fidelity of love. It is no coincidence that sport has played a significant role in the lives of many saints in our day, both as a personal discipline and as a means of evangelization. We can think of Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, the patron saint of athletes, who will be canonized later this year on the 7th of September. His straightforward and luminous life reminds us that just as no one is born a champion, no one is born a saint. It is daily training in love that brings us closer to final victory and enables us to contribute to the building of a new world. St. Paul VI also observed this 20 years after the end of the Second World War, when he reminded the members of a Catholic athletic association how much sports had helped to restore peace and hope in a society devastated by the consequences of war. Pope Paul VI went on to say, "Your efforts are directed at the formation of a new society, in the recognition that sport, by virtue of the sound educational values it promotes, can be a most useful means for the spiritual elevation of the human person, the primary and indispensable condition for an orderly, peaceful, and constructive society." Dear athletes, the Church entrusts you with a beautiful mission: to reflect in all your activities the love of the triune God, for your own good and for that of your brothers and sisters. Carry out this mission with enthusiasm, as athletes, as trainers, as associations and groups, and within your families. Pope Francis liked to point out that the Gospel presents the Virgin Mary as ever active, on the move, even running, ever ready, as mothers are, to set out at a sign from God to help her children. Let us ask her to accompany our effort and enthusiasm, and to guide it always toward the greatest victory of all, the prize of eternal life on that playing field, where games will never end, and our joy will be complete. So that is the homily given by our current Holy Father, Pope Leo XIV, on the occasion for the Jubilee of Sport in Rome. So, to quick context, right now we are living in a Jubilee year, which Pope Francis begun back in January, and he opened it up and he gave it the designation or the title Jubilee of Hope. So that's a theme we're reflecting on. Pope Leo is continuing the celebration of the Jubilee year that's currently going on in Rome. They just finished, you might have seen some videos of the Jubilee of Youth in Rome, which looked like a ton of fun, and I wish I was there. But before that, sometime in June, they had a Jubilee of Sports. So they have Jubilee for all sorts of things. They have Jubilee for priests, seminarians. They have a Jubilee for sport. And I guess a bunch of athletes came. I don't know. I wasn't invited. I didn't go. I guess I'm not good enough of an athlete for that. But he was talking, obviously, to people who are in the sports industry or athletes, whether professionally or recreationally. And he gave this beautiful homily, Pope Leo XIV. And I think there are two things that I want to kind of focus on, that I think he himself is focusing on. I noticed this in our Holy Father. I think he's really big on this. The first one is the recovery of our humanity, or a re-emphasizing of our humanity in the midst of a technological and digital world. He himself took the name Leo XIV because he sees himself as a pope, just like his predecessor Leo XIII, who took the papacy in the midst of a great like technological revolution in the world that was also affecting the church. And so him, 21st century, with the advent of AI and all this technology, he sees himself as another pope, another Leo, who's taking the papacy in the midst of a great technological revolution that has all sorts of consequences for the way our society is run, functions, also the way we see ourselves as human beings. And he's always careful to emphasize again and again that technology should not lead to the loss of our humanity. And in the ways that it might, we need to find means to combat against that dehumanization, to recover our humanity. And so with sport, he sees sport as a way to build up human culture. And then we see it. I remember there was a guy that runs on our team, I'm not going to name him, but he said that Chicago is really at its best during the marathon, that he had this really kind of negative view of the city and Chicago for a long time, coming from not Chicago, not from a big city. But then he experienced the marathon, and he thought, this is incredible. There's these strangers on the streets who are cheering you on, holding up these hilarious signs. This like great community. This comes out of the woodwork. You'd think this great city is just everyone's just stuck in their own cells, on their phones, minding their own business, hustling. But here people come out for a big sporting event, and it brings people together. But Pope Leo is saying that, look at the Chicago Marathon, look at what this can do for our humanity and for our society. Sports can build friendships. sports can create community. It can bring people who otherwise would not associate with each other, people who are physically close to each other in a big city, but who are, in some sense, emotionally and spiritually distant, right, as a result of our technologized society. It can cover those bounds. It can cover that distance and bring them close once again. It's only in an event like Chicago where you have so much fun on the streets and all these things that people aren't preoccupied anymore in the digital headspace, but are focused on the present moment. I know as a runner, that's what I have to fight for every mile, every half mile, every 100 meters. Is need to stay focused on the present moment. Need to stay focused on the present moment. In that sense, it tests my own humanity. I think another thing that Pope Leo is hitting on is, and it's something that I've talked a lot about on the podcast with Deacon Bailey, is that a lot of, especially running to win isn't so much about do I run well today. I often like to say that you can't run 100% of the time. Like, you might have a bad run today. I've had a couple series of bad runs where I just feel bad, and that's okay. You get back up, you get back on your feet. The important thing is, I might feel tired today. Tomorrow I get up at the same time and I run again, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And so, as Pope Leo points out, Jesus shows us that this is the way to life. Jesus shows us that victory isn't obtained just by sheer strength of will in a single moment, but victory through fidelity. Fidelity in the little things, fidelity in the simple things, in duty, in repetition, in consistency. That true victory is fidelity. I offer that too, I think. I think Pope Leo is offering that to us as we train for a marathon. I mean, the success of a marathon really depends on fidelity. Fidelity to one's training plans. Fidelity to one's goals, to just running, just getting up on time, and getting a run done. It doesn't matter if you feel bad, good, if it's fast or it's not fast, but just doing it. Exercising your will, choosing to pursue the good, to forgo comfort and pleasure, and seeking something higher. And finally, I think, so Pope Leo talks about how the Italian word for that they use to cheer people on, which is a really interesting word, and to my English ears it sounds like die, which is kind of threatening if you're just like competing in a race and people are just yelling at you, die, die, die. Okay, that would be really intense. But he says actually, it means give. It means give, and there's something fitting about that, and that sports is all about giving. That we give of ourselves. I think we see that very explicitly in what we do for Team Our Lady of the Angels. Like, why am I here? Why am I running this at all? It is really just to raise money for these sisters who have become my good friends over the years, for their community, and for the people that they serve. So it's a way for me, using my own gifts and talents and my hobby, something I enjoy doing, running, to be more than just about me. It's more than just about me now. It's about giving. I give to the sisters, who in turn give their lives to God, and who in turn God uses them to serve his people, to provide for those whom he loves. And we see in our community too. I love that OLA, the running team, has sort of become its own. It has sort of become a community. Has become a community gathered around the Franciscans. And again, Pope Leo emphasizes this. This is what sports can do. Sports helps us to transcend the distances created by our technologized and digital society, and it helps us again to refocus on these vital connections that are incarnate, community, friendships. It's an occasion to come together. I think the marathon is exactly that. It's both an occasion to give and an occasion to come together as friends and family, united really by sports, by this great celebration, this great parade in some sense that is the Chicago Marathon. And for us as Christians, we don't forget the Lord in it, right? So it isn't a religious event per se, but I know for me, every year it's become a sort of pilgrimage. I go to it, or almost like a retreat. I go to the marathon weekend. I re-encounter people that I've met, catch up with people. I'm edified by doing that. I'm revitalized. I'm renewed. I pray, go to mass, hang out, run the marathon, do something fun like that, epic, hard, difficult, regroup, reconnect, reflect, renew. And after the weekend, I just feel revitalized in some sense, tired physically, but always emotionally and spiritually revitalized. And something really good happened to me. I was fed. I wasn't fed just by like Morton's on the course or bananas or Gatorade. I was fed spiritually, most of all. So I come back home, I go back to my room, and I lie down in bed with very tired legs, but a very full heart every time. I think that is the beauty of sports that Pope Leo is talking about. It goes to show you that the reality, yes, sports, when lived in this way, and I think we as members of Team OLA do it well, when sports is lived in this way, sports really are a reflection of the inner life of God. And that this is really a foretaste of heaven. This is exactly what it's like to run together and to rejoice forever with the communion of the saints. I just want to end with the last line that Pope Leo speaks. It's just so beautiful. He says, let us ask Our Lady to accompany our effort and enthusiasm, and to guide it always toward the greatest victory of all, the prize of eternal life, on that playing field where games will never end and our joy will be complete. So Team OLA, I hope you enjoyed this first installment of spiritual reading or table reading. I don't really know I'm going to call it. Maybe runner read. I don't know. I hope it's been spiritually nourishing and helpful for you to reflect on as we continue to trot along to the 2025 Bank of America Chicago Marathon. God bless you.